I'm not sure what I'm going to call this week, because to put the heading as stop playing small. I mean, it sounds negative, so, you know, and don't doesn't work. Anything with don't in front of it kind of ends up in do that. So I'm not quite sure what to call it, but there definitely was a massive energy that said, see who you are. Can you just see who you are? It's amazing what people do through their life, what they stand in. And it certainly does appear that those with high caliber, those with high standards and ethics and accountability, they're the ones that are suffering. And it's sad that becomes a suffering rather than a seeing who you are, that you can bring so much through on in being what that is, rather than getting sucked into the despair and hopelessness of what you see the rest of the world as in comparison to what your standards or abilities are. It's sad when it seems to go in that direction, when so much capacity of standing is in the beings, in you. So, two beings that I saw last weekend actually came back this weekend, and it was like there was something else that had to complete what that was last week, and I was of their own volition. So there also appeared this week that when we see what it is, we need to exercise it. I thought of calling it exercise it. But it does take an exercise. It takes an exercise to recall and bring back the fullness of who you are as to how you see it and what you are going to do with that or bring through with that, rather than the hopelessness and despair of getting sucked into this black hole, instead of being the light that comes out and can create into being amazing things. A friend of mine shared with me it's a site on, I'll link it below. It's actually a Facebook page that talks about amazing things that women have done over the time. And this particular story was about Mary Kay, and oh my God, the history of what that woman did and what she stood for. She did not get sucked away into the hopelessness and despair. It's brilliant. People are brilliant. There's a brilliant light in all of us. Exercise it. So, one of the beings that came, that was, I saw last week as well, was very much that being that was very clearly and calmly seeing an aspect of this capacity to stand in the tornado and not touch the tar baby of people who don't know who they are, and then being drawn further and further into hopelessness and despair, rather than realizing, I can stand in that point, you too need to exercise and learn how to do that. Exercise how to do that. Because doing it for them is the enabling that feels hopeless. Because it is hopeless until they learn to tie their own shoelaces up. And also for you to see who you are, so you know when to stop. So a disconnect happened. It lost the space of this. And what showed up was rather nice. The pattern was rather nice because it sort of showed the view from above, and it showed more like that, like a looking into and bringing through that aspect of self. And all of us have this, but this being has this in particular, where her presence without saying anything, and that was with a few actually that showed up last weekend, which was yesterday. They have a presence that when saying nothing, it's tangible in the room without needing to say a word. But what happens, these beings, in feeling that they're not enough and that there are situations in the world, and focusing on those situations in the world, they feel hopelessness and despair. And the focus needs to again come just in the value of their presence is sufficient. Because this feeling, this hopelessness and despair is not going to assist in any shape or form. It's now time to focus on that capacity that one has, value it. Whether it does anything or not, in its silence, it still has this presence that when the situation occurs where action can take place and visions can be brought through, that will happen. But it can't happen if the focus is feeling small. No one is small. It is so beautiful when we can come together as a group and just feel the presence of each other. We don't need to do anything. There's just that sense of enjoying each other's presence. It's so delightful. And when we do that, no one feels small, no one feels big. They just are who they are, and it just is. We need to go to that isness and bring forth when the opportunity arises that can be brought through. So in this process, and realizing that they drown in hopelessness and despair, to let that go and to see who they are is almost like seeing it from this direction and arriving, they finally felt born. You know, this is into the fifth decade of their life, but they finally feel they're born to bring through and to enjoy what that is. Another being that I saw, very valuable in the community, does lots and lots of work with others, realizing that she does not need to be on call all the time, feeling that something has to be fixed all the time. And going to an event that's about to happen soon, to realize that if others approach her and pull her into this therapeutic mode, to actually say to herself, it's not my job to do this right now. That's not what I'm here for right now. And to actually be able to stop and feel it's enough just to be present and not feel this continuous need to be there for others, and that there's a never-ending process of others. We can feel very small if those others are always there and there's never an end to it. There's a non-seeing of self that when it can stop and go, that's not what I'm here for now. That presence of self itself is massive for others to be around. Because we carry that energy just to be there is awesome. So a being that I saw that followed through, again, deep ethics, profound insights and contemplations. But the hopelessness and despair is so thick, it was like a blanket. It was like a blanket, and there was this fear that if that blanket wasn't there, that they would lose their function. It's like, I need the stress, I need the despair because it's what energizes me, but it actually is at a turning point where they're seeing that that actually is not viable anymore. There's a exhaustion and a tiredness and an impossibility to eat more of that gruel that is so not digestible and doable and endurable. That moving that blanket off and seeing the opportunity that actually is there, that is lighter and more joyous and more supportive of how we like to live in community together and move forward, was available. But the subconscious attachment to that heavy blanket had to be thrown off so that that lightness could be embraced and that the best of what is available can then shine through, and to see it and embrace it and to exercise it, so that if you feel that blanket is coming back, you exercise, go, no, no, no. You throw that blanket off. That is not how we're going to move forward. And again, that was followed by somebody with high integrity that has caused so much pain in life. We're not matched. And a lot of the pain is coming from that way of being. And instead of seeing oneself in the contrast with that integrity, to embrace it and not be hurt by it, not be sucked away by it. And it was funny because in the session it says that the spirit was saying, I want this. And it's like, right, let's have a look. What is it that it is desiring? And I had to sit with it a bit to kind of work with what is it saying? What is it saying here? And what it showed is that it wanted hostility. And what it really wanted was to up the ante, to be hostile when she was feeling hostile towards things outside. And it's like, get hostile when you feel that hostility and say, back off. Be hostile with it. Be done with it. Be hostile with hostility. Makes perfect sense. It's like, I'm not doing that anymore. Really arc up with it. Throw that blanket off. No, I'm not wearing that blanket anymore. I'm not placing myself in that hopelessness and despair anymore. I'm done with it. Feels good. Feels a freedom. Feels a potentiality of living in a life that isn't swimming in that. And then it came to someone who in life has been so remarkable, so generous, so creative, so loving, being there to give whatever she could And being in her 8th decade, some of those things are not as easily done as they were 60 years ago. And what was starting to arrive was this, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't. And in the I can't, the whole structure was falling in on itself, and of course creating more of that falling in on itself, to the point that she was nauseated with the I can't. The body wasn't able to overcome and neutralize that state of I can't. And what was necessary here, and I think we can do this at every age, is to recall what one has done, what one feels good about that they have done in their life. And as that was brought forward, the posture straightened, the spinning around and nausea dissipated, this feeling of self that one can relate to and be in is a very important state to exercise. You know, we feel that others cut us down or make us small or whatever it is. No one does that. We do this to ourselves. This I can't and making one small wasn't coming from the outside. It was done by herself. And I think when we make ourselves small, we do that ourselves. We go, but it was easy, so it's nothing. But the ease of it is the brilliance, the naturalness of it, the capacity of that. I wasn't sure whether I was going to share this one right now, but I will, because it fits. A being came who had massive issues with sleeping and has had so for a very long time. And what actually showed up was a past life that this linked to. And I've come across these past lives before. You've got to remember that all the lives weren't like this, and we don't know whether all these lives are lived all at once, and we are interacting with all of them at the same time, which makes this time and being present in this lifetime to the best of your capacity and not playing small so important, because it affects everything and everyone, and it does. So it went to this past life, and it showed a young being that was so fearful that they trained themselves not to sleep, to stay awake, and when threatened, to actually stay calm. And that aspect has come into this lifetime, from that lifetime. And I said, I bet when you were younger, you could go out and you could stay awake all night, where some of your friends would have said, that's it, I'm going home, and you would have been able to just have fun all night. And it was like, yes, because that's the gift from that lifetime. To have this ability to stay in that conscious awake zone, but it's not helping. We're now going to sleep. So an exercise showed up to do, which is the first moment that you do wake up. You go into that zone where you relax deeply and you already feel and appreciate how good it is to go to bed at night time into that relaxation. And there are a few other things that went with it. But to actually break the pattern and to establish a new pattern that takes exercise. And to exercise seeing yourself for who you are rather than going to the despair and gloom and hopelessness of not feeling good enough or not having done enough and what I can or can't do. It does not benefit. We need to exercise the capacity that our presence, without lifting a finger, is wonderful just to be with, to just be, exercise being without chopping yourself down, not feeling good enough or feeling that the world isn't good enough, to just be in that space and bring the best forward and have that as an exercise going forward and experience what this is for you to be here. So the cards that showed up were cooperation and sensitivity. Cooperation. Cooperate with yourself. Don't give yourself such a hard time. A balance of give and take is what is needed. Let go and allow that which is for your highest good, and also see yourself as the highest good. Now is the time for active participation in group projects. In active cooperation, you will gain much more than you anticipated. Be responsive to all situations. Don't forget who you are in that. Sensitivity was the other one. Be sensitive, respond rather than react. Take care of your feelings and be sensitive to the needs of others. There is no need for oversensitivity and hurt feelings. You always have a choice to feel how you feel. Be sensitive to your environment. Actively engage all of your senses as you walk upon the earth. And I would say that just being and knowing it's sufficient, it is enough. It is more than enough. And I know some of you probably have missed the Australian bush essences, but the bush essence, I picked one thinking, maybe they'd like to hear about a bush essence that was picked. And it was, oh gosh, I've got it sitting there. It was Sturt Desert Pea. And Sturt Desert Pea, you know, it's that wonderful, wonderful Western Australian flower that is red with its black, beautiful sort of seed in the middle of it. Beautiful, beautiful plant. And it's to do with deep pain, sadness and sorrow. And how that relates to this is these people with high caliber, high standards, the pain to be in a world and the great sadness that others haven't got their capacity has to be let go of. Let it be. They too all will, in their own way, it will all resolve. It will find its resolution. Be at your best, enjoy who you are, and don't get drowned in that hopelessness and sadness. Bring the best forth, exercise that. Lots of love.